These are the remnants of an old limestone wall built by native Bahamians in Nassau, Bahamas during the Great Depression in 1930. In Islanders of the Stream, A History of the Bahamian People, Volume 2, page 267, Creighton and Sanders said, "In crowded New Providence, employment was so scarce that laborers competed with each other for the available work and unquestioningly undertook whatever work was required of them. Things were tough. Money was hard to come by. A shilling a day and a meal was offered, and the wall was built." Stories about walls always tend to be interesting ones, and this one is no exception. The 2-mile, 10-foot wall was commissioned by Ralph Gregory Collins. The entire property of Mr. Collins was surrounded with iron railings to the north and a continuous wall to west, south, and east. It stretched from Shirley Street all the way south almost to the Wolf Road that we know now. At the time, almost the entire area, including Wolf Road, was farmland. The original wall ended just behind Fritz Lane South and Plantal Street East and ran straight across Collins Avenue along the northern border of Columbus Primary School, then north along the eastern side of 8th Terrace East Court, Centerville, where it headed back north to Shirley Street. Remnants of the wall on both the west and east side can still be seen. Most of the wall is readily visible along the east side of Fritz Lane, and bits of it can be seen behind a number of dead-end streets off of Mount Royal Avenue, including Durham, Wilton, and Ludlow Streets. Ralph Gregory Collins, the gentleman who commissioned the wall, was born in 1876 in Westerly, Washington County, Rhode Island. He visited the Bahama Islands around 1904 and soon decided to live here. He made his living initially by exporting sponge and sisal abroad. He married Marion Spooner Bryce at Christ Church Cathedral in Nassau, Bahamas on September 2, 1909. It was said that Ralph Collins was an extremely wealthy businessman involved in everything from bootlegging and rum running to real estate, and one source states that more than 50,000 cases of liquor were believed to have passed through his business every month. Interestingly, this 600-acre plot of land owned by Mr. Collins that the wall was built around was originally owned by his father-in-law, a Bahamian from Long Island, Bahamas, David Andrew Bryce. David Andrew Bryce, according to WikiTree, was born in 1836 in Alligator Bay, Long Island. He was a commission merchant and imported dry and fancy goods. He was also a sponge broker who was president of the Nassau Sponge Exchange Company for a few years. Mr. Bryce was also a member of the Bahamas House of Assembly and a member of the Legislative Council. 2 months after the Collins-Bryce marriage, Ralph Collins' father-in-law, David Andrew Bryce, died, and Marion and Ralph Collins inherited her father's property in Centerville, Nassau in 1909. It was known as the Bryce property and later as the Collins property. The first Centerville house was built of wood more than 100 years ago. When it was destroyed by the hurricane of 1929, then-owner businessman Ralph Gregory Collins rebuilt it with an ability to withstand hurricane winds. No expense was spared. This is the front of the property on Shirley Street where an iron gate still stands. The story of the wall varies depending on who tells it. There is no dispute regarding who commissioned the wall, where the wall was built, or even by whom. The question has always been, why? Collins is said in many corners to have had the wall built out of a sense of civic duty. After Prohibition ended, the Great Depression left many locals and family islanders in poverty, and some say that he commissioned the wall to give the locals work. He paid them $1 a day and gave them a meal. Others say that he commissioned the wall to keep blacks from over the hill out of the eastern side of Nassau, where whites lived.
A lot of people claim that wall was built to keep the colored people from getting over this wall to the white people.
Wow.
But that's
not true.
Not a thread.
Oh.
Not a thread.
That's all I
know. Yeah, and if you check the Tribune gave you the whole story of that years back. That wall was built during the Depression by Mr. Collins to help the colored people out.
Yes.
Oh.
He paid them, not all after this, because in those days shilling was plenty money. Well, not plenty money, but
it was money.
He gave him $1 a day and a meal. And that wall was built around his property just to give them something to do.
That wall, believe it or not, is at the northern boundary of Columbus Primary.
Truly.
It runs that way. Then it starts going back north. What's it called? Shirley Heights. That goes all the way back to the it should have gone all the way back to there are pieces of it still existing on the eastern side.
Where it come up, I can tell you where it come.
Frankana, right? Yeah.
That would come right back.
It came all the way back there,
That boundary is to the west of Z&S.
Right.
Now, I know that because the school was just across the road from Hawkins Hill.
Okay.
That's where we went to school.
Okay.
Because at recess, we had an hour. We would have, say, a can of corned beef and go over in Collins' property because he had some fruit trees. The only thing we were afraid of was some dogs. And the dogs was down to the house.
Yeah, so they far away.
If some years ago, if you would get over there, you'd see the bully beef can we left.
Yeah, okay.
But that's all bent up now. But to put a damper on what these people are saying about the wall, there was no house between the wall and the eastern side of Mackey Street. And on the eastern side, it was only about 4 or 5 houses.
Okay.
Because the western side was farmland.
Oh.
You hear what I say?
Farm.
Where Albury Supply is now, all of that
Was gone. It wasn't even
was
there.
farmland, man.
Okay.
Wolf Road, farmland.
Okay. Yeah.
Where the school is now, that was Sisal property. Nobody lived there. Not a soul. So there was no reason to keep these people out. They didn't know where to go. No people could see over here. That was bush. Bush.
What?
We would come, the school was right on top of the hill. That road didn't come through then, you know.
No.
It stopped right at the brink of the hill.
So
The school was here.
So like the same thing with Sayers Hill then?
Yes.
It only went so far?
No, Sayers Hill went over, down the bottom of the hill.
Alright, to Rosetta? That's
Say it's
Rosetta?
about there. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the blacks lived just to the east of Hawkins, where my grandparents lived. Where Ian is now. That was my grandparents' place.
Okay.
He had all that property down to the bottom of the hill and going to where the school is now.
Okay.
Because where the school was, that was his property that he gave to the school.
Okay.
And that's where the road stopped, right there. Down the hill was a little path. us boys, having an hour for lunch, would wander down where City Market is now.
Yeah.
That seemed to have been the lowest part of the land. Because when we have heavy rain,
The water was
water
set.
was
water would
Settled
get
right
you up
there.
here.
Wow.
Now, the invitation was some guava trees was down there,
Yeah. Okay.
right? And we would go down, take off our clothes, hang it in
So
trees.
Cocoa Plum too, then and custard apple.
No, not there.
Boys.
No. Clement Maynard,
Uh-huh.
he went to school today, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. For a time. And his clothes fell in the water. And he couldn't go back to school afternoon.
Ah, boy.
So they used to let y'all off the
He
campus
can-
for break
he can.
then?
But we had an hour.
You got a
Yeah.
hot skin.
That was
They-
too much
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Too much
Yeah,
time.
boy.
If they give them an hour to leave campus now, they ain't coming back.
You know, right?
No.
But that was fun.
So,
That was fun.
My name is Al Moss, born June 5th, 1955,
Mr. Moss, where did you live growing up?
DeBow Street.
Were you familiar with the Collins Wall?
Yes, ma'am. That's where we used to play. On the wall, on top of the wall. We used to walk from on the wall, go straight down the Malcolm Park.
So you actually walked along the wall. Wasn't that dangerous?
Yes, because they had some long pole on top of the wall.
Wow. And did anybody ever get hurt?
Yes, a few people fall down, broke their leg, broke their hand.
Do you know how that wall was put there?
Oh, they say by a gentleman called Mr. Collins. So we used to call it Collins Wall after. So the wall is still there. Just that some parts are broken that people walk through it, make it shortcut. But as you pass by, you still could see the wall, the high wall.
Were you ever upset about the wall being there?
No, I never was upset because during that time, at least certain people could have passed in that area. And that was it. And we used to call it the Rocky Road. It was in Oakland Hall Street. We used to call it the Rocky Road because it ain't had no road.
Okay, so there were no homes in there?
No homes.
Okay. All right. So did you suffer with any discrimination back then? Did you have any issues with racism or anyone treating you funny because of your color?
No, because back then things were sweet.
Okay.
Huh? Things were sweet. Don't care who was in power, things were sweet back then.
So can I have your first and last name, please?
Glenroy Saunders,
Mr. Glenroy Saunders. What year were you born?
1943.
And where were you born, Mr. Saunders?
I guess somewhere on East Street.
Okay, East Street, Nassau.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Who were your parents?
Joan Saunders was my father, and Corinne Saunders my mother.
Were your parents from the Bahamas?
Yeah.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Was it Nassau or?
Andros, my old man was from Andros, and my mom was from Nassau.
Okay.
No.
So where did you actually grow up? Was it East Street?
Closer to East. No, I grew up. First of all, we started out in Hardings Lane, which is the corner at the bottom of East Street Hill.
Okay.
Okay, we grew up through there because we had some generation property through there. And I spent a lot of my years. I went to school from there with Sylvester Junior and Western Senior.
Okay.
And then we moved from there. After a while, we went to Fort Finn Castle, which is right across the street.
Right.
We spent some time there. If I can remember correctly, later on we went to near the Windsor Park down here. And we were moving around, but you know, that's what you do.
Okay.
You gotta follow mama.
Right. So where you are now in Fritz Lane, when did that happen?
Oh, years ago now.
Okay.
I bought this place when I was with Spotless Cleaners.
Okay.
And decided to fix it up, and I opened a couple of businesses here. Put on another piece, and here we are.
And here on First Lane, you are very near to the western side of the Collins Wall.
Right.
Are you aware of that wall being built, or were you aware when it was built?
No idea, because I grew up mostly on Fortune Castle, and we used to walk the wall all the time, looking for fruits and thing on the other side.
So the wall was, so you walked on the wall?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a little dangerous?
No, not really, you know. Youngster, you get used to, you can do these things.
Young and agile.
Right. You see, you can do these things. You walk and you see some canal store there, you reach and you grab that one and you see something else. That's what you do.
Did you witness anyone ever being injured?
No.
No? Okay. So, as far as you are aware, do you know if there was any specific reason for the wall being built?
Yeah. Apparently he wanted to, Mr. Collins wanted to keep his farm thing separate from the other area, so he built a huge wall. So they build from all the way from Fort Finn Castle straight down. The end of the wall is right down the street here. I think it's Lightboy Street or the next street down.
Do you remember at all when the wall was actually broken down or cut through in some areas? And do you remember why?
No, I think at that time, that must have been, I'm not sure really, but must have been so easier access to, because Collins Hill and all that was being built all over Collins Wall, so they had to find a way to get through a little easier, so they break through portions of the wall and made it a roadway.
Do you think that was done with the Collins' permission? I mean, or he would have been passed away.
There then.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only way they could have done that.
Right. Okay. Is there any other information about the wall that you are aware of?
Not really. Just that I grew up around it.
Right.
Sure, we used to walk it almost every day.
That's interesting that you walked the wall. So was it only young people? I guess. I mean, how?
Young, all these school-age kids. You know, that's what we did.
Right.
Yeah, and like I say, I grew up on Fort Finn Castle. You know, around the Fort Hill, and what they used to call the Crazy Hill. That's 66 steps.
Right.
We grew up around that area. That's why I learned to play baseball.
In Islanders of the Stream, A History of the Bahamian People, Volume 2, page 267 and 268, Creighton and Saunders said, the bootlegging millionaire Ralph G. Collins was regarded almost as a philanthropist when he employed hundreds of workers, most of them semi-starving out-island migrants, for a shilling a day plus a hot midday meal. They were set to build an unbroken 2-mile, 10-foot wall around his huge property close to downtown, stretching south from Shirley Street almost to Wolf Road. It continued, Collins' motives were mainly commercial and not necessarily racist. Though over the years, this wall was to assume great symbolic importance. It protected from encroachment and sustained the market value of subdivided properties in what was to become the white and brown middle-class enclave of Centerville. But it also literally walled in the whole of Grantstown from eastward expansion or even communication, a visible class and sub-ethnic barrier built by the duped black underclass itself. End quote. Michael Creighton said in his book A to Z of Bahamas Heritage, page 95, ostensibly to keep out poachers and squatters, but mainly to keep up the market value of his residential lots, Collins surrounded his land with iron railings to the north and a continuous wall to the west, south, and east, of which by far the most substantial and significant was that hemming in the teeming population of Grantstown to the west. Ironically, The wall builders were drawn from the very people whom Collins aimed to exclude, the hundreds of black laborers out of work because of the Great Depression, who were willing to toil for $1 a day plus a free midday meal. For 20 years, Collins Wall was an uncomfortable fact of life for some black Bahamians. Though unguarded and unpatrolled, it was a barrier to traffic and forced individuals, including black domestics working in Centerville homes, to scramble up and down makeshift ladders. It became a scandal with the rising race and class consciousness of the 1950s, particularly when, after the death of Ralph Collins, Bay Street's Paramount leader, Roland Simonet, became the most active developer of Centerville. The opening of Collins Wall was one of the demands, along with the desegregation of restaurants and the ending of film censorship, of the Moderate Citizens Committee formed in 1950. And it was the subject of a petition by Sir Etienne Deputy's Bahamas Democratic League in 1955, at the same time that demands were being made for the end of racial discrimination in general. Nominally achieved in 1956, but it was not until the burgeoning Progressive Liberal Party took up the issue as a major plank of their platform, and Bay Street's United Bahamian Party were prepared to make a tactical concession in the run-up to the 1962 general election, that the breakthrough was literally accomplished. Late in 1961, the UBP voted $18,000 for the making of gaps in Collins Wall, creating 4 new east-west routes, joining Grantstown's McCullough Corner, Gibbs and Tooth Shop Corners, and Sunlight Village to Centerville's 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th terraces, respectively. This concession was one of the factors that helped the UBP win the 1962 election. Remnants of the wall, however, survive to this day, and its effects are still clear on the map of over-the-hill Nassau. No less than 10 corners branching eastwards off East Street still have dead ends. These are more than antiquarian or archaeological interests. They are a reminder of social and racial divisions no more than a half-century ago that in today's Bahamas seem almost incredible. In 1944, Ralph Gregory Collins was seriously injured in a car accident and confined to his home. He resigned from the House of Assembly in 1946 due to deteriorating health and died 5 months later. He is buried in the Eastern Cemetery. The home and property was then taken over by St. Andrew's School after his death, which occupied the premises until 1971, when the school moved to larger grounds in Yamacraw and the government of the Bahamas bought the 6-acre property near downtown. The Ministry of Education occupied the building until 2003, when it too moved into its new home. The property now houses the corporate offices of the Bahamas Antiquities, Monuments, and Museum Corporation. Only remnants of the wall is left now. It was cut through for access to many side streets throughout the entire length of it over the years. Many are not even aware that there was a Collins Wall, and many of those who know have no clue about its history. And those who do have their own version of it. No matter what the version or even Ralph Collins's intention for having the wall built, what is clear is that the wall eventually caused not just an inconvenience and an uncomfortable fact of life, a bone of contention, a barrier to traffic, and a subject of debate for black Bahamians, but it caused a great divide between the people that it so effectively separated. Fortunately, that physical separation no longer exists, although some may say that the mental and emotional scars will remain for many for years to come. Ronald Reagan once said, "There are no constraints on the human mind, no walls around the human spirit, no barriers to our progress, except those that we ourselves erect." Preserve your family history with a video biography. Ask your parents and grandparents to tell the story of their lives. A personal history is a priceless gift for family, friends, and generations to come. Contact Barbara Wilson at 457-3188.